Alright guys, a little bit of a news roundup today, getting into a few interesting, as always, interesting areas, of which as usual are time-stamped. I do recommend clicking on the video bar, like hovering over it, or checking out the description, because the timestamps are always there and you can skip around if you want to, but I do recommend watching the whole video to stay up to date on all of the news. Now, yes, right away to begin with here, I know that there's a set leak of the Supergirl suit that's going around before anyone says it, and, you know, spoiler alert, I guess, if you don't want to know any details about it, but, you know, it's the suit, but hey, I know some people don't even want to see it until the movie comes out. But as I said, timestamps, right? Now, full credit here to Unbox PhD over on Twitter for getting a shot and also allowing me, not all the photographers out there do this, but allowing me to feature it in my video. But what I will also be doing is leaving a link in the description box of this video to their Twitter page where photos are there, but also their YouTube channel, because they've just uploaded a video of this scene unfolding. Either way, let's talk about it, what we can make out here, even though, again, it's quite a distance, so, you know, we don't get a whole bunch of details compared to, obviously, an official look. But it's very, very clear to me that Milly Alcock is sporting the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow suit. Shocker, shocker, as it's literally adapting the story. Now, I kind of, you know, don't want to like take the piss out of that too much, just because, you know, even when you're adapting the story, you can make some changes to the suit. But largely here, you know, shout out to Job Huts, because basically the artwork that he's done is basically what we're going to be getting, which is, again, very, very, very accurate to the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow suit from the comic books. But just to stress one more time, since this shot is so far away, it's hard to make out any like little intricacies of the suit that they may have changed from the comic book panel. But the very clear things that are comic accurate is, of course, the skirt, the big kind of gold belt. Now, I've seen a few people notice that the red cape appears to be cut off around about like shoulder length around here, which is why, you know, you can see the big gold belt from behind. Now, this is probably one of those situations, and we have seen this before, where they have like a bit of a practical cape, but it's been cut off at a certain point behind, just so that they can CGI the rest of it in the scene, because it's probably too impractical to actually film with. Now, this could also be Jason Momoa's Lobo, possibly, maybe, standing next to Kara on this tank, if you want to call it a tank. I've seen some people debate this. Now, what I see is a big kind of hulking Jason Momoa-like dude, very pale skin, black hair, although from a distance, it doesn't look like super accurate to the Lobo looks that we get in the comics. Or while it does at the same time, it's just like there's little bits of extra armor. The axe that he's using, or the weapon of choice, isn't like as signature as it could be compared to the comic book designs of weapons that we've seen him use. I would say that this probably is Lobo, as we know from Jason Momoa very recently that he's only around halfway through shooting his scenes. Lo and behold, we've now got shots of Milly Alcock filming as Supergirl again, standing next to a guy who kind of, from a distance, looks like Lobo. So this could be the situation where, although Milly Alcock is very Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow comic book accurate, Jason Momoa's Lobo could be a bit of an amalgamation of Lobo designs from the comic book, because that's the thing, Lobo isn't really in Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. They're kind of like, you know, again, not copying and pasting the comic there. They're being a bit innovative with being like, hey, maybe the bounty hunter should be Lobo. And that also, you know, allows some other stories between Lobo and Supergirl from other comic books out there, like, I don't know, World's Finest or something, to add a bit of that dynamic in a story that, you know, he wasn't really in the first place. So all I'm trying to say there is that his design could be done a little bit differently than the Lobo you're expecting, but this could be another person. But I don't know, man. I know I might not be showing it on screen, but you've probably seen the photos yourself by now, or again, you can see them in the description or the video that I've linked to Unbox PhD's channel. I also totally forgot to mention that her House of L crest is indeed the colors of that of the comic book, which some of you may be like, well, duh, but, for a moment, we weren't completely sure, given the symbol that was on the back of the chair on set. They could have maybe have done that differently, but that is the same. And there could be a symbol on the cape, perhaps, but it's just too hard to tell given the detail or lack of detail in some of these photos. So there could be one very high one up. Some people were saying that they can see it. I think I see what they mean, but I really can't call it for now. The last thing I have to say about this, I guess, is I just hope that if they or anyone else gets a really high quality shot, or maybe even if it's just from this shot and footage alone, that maybe it perhaps encourages Gunn to put out a better official look of the suit in order to allow her costume to be judged more fairly, because we all know what people are like when it comes to judging comic book suits from set photos versus when they see it in the movie itself, where all of a sudden, like the clip recently of the Fortress, and I'm not saying everyone was saying this, but a lot of people were like, oh my god, they've improved it. And I'm like, or it's that you're now seeing it in motion in the movie, So could that happen? Maybe. Has it already happened with the Blessing and Curse on this channel to the point of when I publish this, the bloody official look will already be revealed? Maybe, knowing my luck. Alright, so now to talk a little bit more about the Batman Part 2 situation. Now that some of the dust has settled, I'm going to attempt to give some more insight and clarity into this whole thing as comprehensively as I can, with one or two slight little updates, or, it's just kind of like, okay, where are we at now with what's come out? So first of all, I wanted to reiterate what Justin Kroll, the writer of the Major Trade Deadlines article about this situation, in where he said, little clarity as there seems to be some confusion. This film will shoot this summer, and like the Odyssey, so he's talking about Dune Messiah, by the way, in an ensemble pick where Pats could shoot over, or his shoot could be over in reasonable time and have it not affect the Batman 2 whenever that goes into production. So I said over on Twitter, around about the time I published my video, this, and I'm not pretending to know Pattinson's filming schedule for Dune Messiah, but it is indeed an ensemble cast with a lot going on, so, let's dig into that for a minute. For example, Austin Butler, the primary antagonist for Dune Part 2, shot for around 2 months for Part 2. They, obviously for Robert Pattinson, could have catered the shooting schedule to shoot in an order that caters to him, like out of order shooting and whatnot, and he shoots for a good couple of months despite Pattinson's primary antagonist role in Dune Messiah, and finishing well in time for any filming for, sometime in November for the Batman Part 2, when we're roughly expecting that to commence, because again, Matt Reeves to Pattinson and other people have said at the end of the year. The end of the year should be around November. But obviously, the Batman 2 could get delayed in general at any point, something that I've left the door open to in general, given the context of the personal things that Matt Reeves has had to deal with behind the scenes. I've always wondered if that could unfortunately inflame progress again at any time and lead to another delay. Not a delay of the film's release date, but a delay in the production date, rather. But just going by this Dune Messiah casting news alone, no, that isn't technically as concerning as people make it out to be when only observing that by itself. Just to reiterate here, like every actor in a 5-month movie shoot, so let's say Dune Messiah has a 5-month movie shoot like Dune Part 2, every actor in the 5-month movie shoot does not shoot for 5 months. Again, like you will have some actors even shooting for a few weeks out of that 5-month period. Or you have Austin Butler just shoot for 2 months. Either way, regardless, I highly doubt Robert Pattinson is shooting every minute of that 5-month period. If anything, if the Batman Part 2 is still on track to get greenlit for pre-production sometime soon, so hopefully around June, to have an actual film cameras rolling situation in November, Pattinson should be having his feet kicked up after Dune Messiah sometime around September to prepare for the rest of September, all the way throughout October, to then shoot in November. right? So that's like one way of looking at it, with just kind of looking at the way, you know, film production works. Now, why is it that despite what I just said a minute ago, that it could, you know, as Apocalyptic Horseman, Nexus Point News, and some others are theorizing with the stuff they know behind the scenes, that it could still be an early 2026 shooting situation? Well, one thing I will say is, despite talking about how Pattinson's schedule could still easily work for a November production date, because, you know, he might only shoot for a couple of months for his Dune Messiah role, so again, perfectly lining him up for a Batman Part 2 shoot. Well, after talking to some people I know about this whole situation, so I've really been trying to, like, get a clear, level-headed approach as best as I can. And one of the things that is coming up is that there hasn't really been any rumblings behind the scenes about the film in terms of getting people hired, like grips, crew, like people who make this stuff happen, building sets behind the scenes. But then one could argue, well, would they be hiring people like to actually, you know, the people on set to actually start building sets with their bare hands and stuff like that when they haven't even got the green light for pre-production right now? Not necessarily. So my counter to that would be, well, technically, you know, if it's greenlit for production sometime around late May, early June, for that 5-6 month period to take us to November's actual shooting date, wouldn't they hire the crew nearer to that point? And that is totally true. There's a lot of people in the industry that they can hire to work on set like that nearer to actual pre-production. So there is that, but sometimes even in advance, you would, like, there are feelers out there. There are people in the industry who would be like, okay, clear your schedule because we want you for this 5-6 month period of time. So that's how, another example to you guys who don't look into this stuff as much, that's how stuff can even leak out with regards to things like this, because you might have a bunch of people being hired and told to clear their calendars for an upcoming movie that is the Batman Part 2. And that's where you'd have a news outlet being like, oh yeah, whispers that the Batman Part 2 is gearing up for pre-production, you know. But there hasn't really been any of that. Now, I am coping and being optimistic and being like, well, they actually still have time to hire crew for that 5-6 month pre-production period. And that they might not even start doing that until, you know, as I keep saying, when we get the pre-production green light, which shouldn't be later than June if it is filming this year. Now, another possibility and insight here is that it is possible that they could start filming this whole operation come November still, like we're all hoping, in where, just like the first The Batman movie, even though it started filming in January 2020, you can look this up yourself, they had the second unit filming taking place in December 2019, which I believe, as I was told, was the Wayne, like stuff to do with the Waynes and the mayoral debate and things like that. And then like the filming took place January 2020. So again, one could argue that a similar thing could be done towards the end of this year, but the main principal photography starts in early 2026, that kind of thing. And then yes, there's the whole personal thing that's going on with Matt Reeves. As I mentioned in my past video or videos about this, even though I learned the context as to what this surrounds quite a while ago, I have no idea if it's been resolved, and that's why, you know, we had Matt Reeves a couple of months back at awards ceremonies saying, like, you know, they feel like filming will happen towards the end of this year, or is it still ongoing? I don't know that. And yes, I know there's been that clip from Grace Randolph floating around that I've seen already quite a few of you ask me in the comments of my other videos about. What I will say is that if she felt like she needed to say anything with regards to the personal matter, I feel like she should have just said what's already been out there, in that it is just this personal matter that's going on that's obviously serious enough to disrupt Reeves' professional life and thus the script. And any more insight into that personal matter is for nobody else to say other than Matt Reeves. So even using that comparison she used in that clip that I've seen going around has come across quite distasteful to a lot of people, including myself, to be honest, because I'm not confirming or denying anything, but like obviously any further insight just isn't for anyone else to say. And, you know, on that subject matter, for me to just expand and address all of that, as I even said in a tweet recently to people getting wound up at me, saying things like this and not divulging Matt Reeves's personal life, such as BobaTalks. Yeah, as much as I dislike Grace, I'm glad that she said this and I'm not mad. You have been hiding this and beating around the bush about this situation for months now, and the entire DC fan base has had enough. You could have told us this last year, but no, you had to hide it. And it's like, I saw that and I couldn't believe, like, this was my response. I've been beating around the bush about this situation in videos because learning more insight and details into Matt Reeves's personal life is absolutely no one's business to reveal publicly. Not mine or anyone else's other than Matt Reeves himself. Now, myself, or scoopers, who came to learn about some of the context behind it, have only ever said that something personal was going on, with some others saying, you know, it's fairly serious, obviously, as I've also acknowledged, to interrupt his professional work, in an effort to legitimately have some way of telling fans, you guys, like in my videos, that there's a valid reason which gives some, yes, albeit ambiguous context as to why the film's progress was disrupted. No one is owed anything more than that. And people even being told that something personal was going on should have been enough and respected without a seeming entitlement to know more. Like, do you know what I mean, guys? I get that it's frustrating. I'm frustrated, and I get that you might not even know the context that I know, even though now, like, it seems to be going around like there's this whole new story developing, but this is my take on all of that. Whatever gets out there about Matt Reeves' personal life, I felt like it was always enough that if people were telling you, myself or scoopers or whatever, that there is some context. I get that it's frustrating that you don't know the context, but guess what? You don't need to know the context because use your head. If he's disrupted from doing professional work because of his personal life, it's clearly no walk in the park with what this person's going through. Thus, all of these comments I've been reading the past few months of like, no, we should know what's going on because this is just ridiculous. Nothing could explain. It's like, what do you mean nothing could explain a disruption? Like, that's the kind of stuff that winds me up. But also the demanding attitude from some people being like, I need to know. Why can't you just have compassion and know that clearly something is up enough for it to... Do you see what I mean? I don't want to repeat what I've said in my tweet and stuff and what I just read out. But I know this isn't every single one of you. Obviously, lots of you have bloody common sense. It doesn't mean that the film is doom and gloom, or people saying Dune and gloom. That one comment made me laugh, whoever posted that. And here's a post, by the way, related, but like, you know, just to offer you how this is a thing that's been going on with Matt Reeves. Like, you don't have to know all the context, but like, you should still have understanding with just knowing that there's something going on. Liked by Mattson Tomlin, the co-writer of The Batman Part 2, literally working with Matt Reeves on the script. Liked by Mattson Tomlin. In the future, after the film comes out, if Reeves himself ever makes it public on what he was going through, then so many of y'all are going to look so stupid and insensitive. And Mattson Tomlin like that, but like, yeah. So this is what I mean. I'm not talking about you or you or you, but like some of the people, you know who you are if like you're kicking up a big fuss. Like, I'm not saying you can't be frustrated about a film's development, but like, you know, the other side of it that we've already got into, it's like, yeah, like even Mattson Tomlin's like, yeah. Finally, to end this off on like, with regards to like whatever update we should hear about next, because lots of people, I think, conflate what we should be hearing about. Like, should we be hearing who the main villain is or some kind of casting first, or an update, if you will, on why there hasn't been an update. So what I can say to that is the only update in my mind we're waiting on technically right now, and why we haven't had casting news to main villain announcements, is because before all of that, the first update in line would be script approved and thus greenlit for pre-production. Like, that's what we are waiting on. Like, anything else you guys want in some form of update here or there would come after that. So yeah, I would hope and yes, expect to hear that within the next couple of months, if and only if they are still trying to aim to film by the end of this year, aka November to me. If not, then I can't imagine it'd be shooting this year. But that's still, regardless, the first update we're going to hear. Script approved, and in conjunction with hearing now they're looking to go into pre-production for 5-6 months. That can happen hopefully anytime now between like June, maybe even July-ish. But again, by that point, it wouldn't surprise me if it's an early 2026 shoot, because you've also got the holiday period in December. So yeah, those are my Batman Part 2 thoughts. Hope it gave some kind of sense of more understanding, even in this somewhat ambiguous period that we're in. But I will say in the next few months, there should be a whole bunch of clarity with whatever it ends up being. Do you know what I mean? They can't really hide it too much more beyond July without giving us a fairly sizable update on what's going on, if it's filming this year or next year. So we'll know in the next couple or 3 or so months anyway. So now moving on to some more DCU stuff. Superman Day. Well, more things could be coming, possibly than just a trailer, due to the official, I think, DC Japan page on Twitter saying Superman first appeared in Action Comics #1 on April 18th, 1938. To celebrate this, we will be posting various Superman-related posts from today through April 18th on the official DC X and Instagram pages. Stay tuned. Now, this is where we got that little video where clearly James Gunn and Jim Lee have sat down to talk about Superman, and this was just like a little kind of segment of their overall talk. And here they talk about even possibly seeing Superman in the same theater because they grew up in the same place, which is crazy. But, you know, it is really making me think that maybe not only do we get the trailer, but other tidbits like this. I mean, the page said they're going to be posting stuff, but it could be other Superman things. But clearly that interview thing was only a small little clip, like a little bite-sized short out of a much bigger thing. So obviously there's going to be more clips from that interview releasing closer to the 18th, or as we get to the 18th. But ladies and gentlemen, I have wonderful, beautiful news for you international people like myself. So Superman, the movie, could be releasing, well, it is apparently releasing earlier internationally, because like literally you look on the website, yes, July 11th in America, but July 9th internationally. So does that, I think that means in the UK, I can see Superman on July 9th. Now, sure, you know, I might go to a early screening anyway, but sometimes they're not as early as some of you may think they are. Like I think I was invited to like a Blue Beetle screening the night before it came out. So I kind of thought, well, I could just see it on the day, like tomorrow morning kind of situation. But now knowing that I will hopefully be able to see Superman on the 9th, that makes me really happy, because obviously running this channel, I'm really busy around that time anyway, because it's literally my wife's birthday on the 12th. So the 11th with it coming out, like that would have just been, oh my God. But now, the 9th, it's like, okay, I have a bit of wiggle room here to do my non-spoiler review and spoiler review and all like the bloody subsequent videos. If you think about it, it's like, oh, this part of the film or that part of the film, or all these things I noticed. What could this mean for the next thing for, you know, I have a bit more time. So this is a big Boba W. Now, I know that there's this whole, you know, the China Film Administration confirming that it will cut back on its import of U.S. films in the wake of Trump's tariffs, saying that the wrongful action of the U.S. government to abuse tariffs on China will inevitably further reduce the domestic audience's favorability towards American films. And yeah, like, you know, there's a whole bunch going on in the world right now, but like for Superman's box office, this wouldn't, you know, if they're like, yeah, guess what, we're not going to show Superman, this is just like a taste of what we can do, that would obviously suck. And I think, if I remember correctly, was it Black Adam that was blocked from release in China as well? And obviously that movie would have done a bit better. Like, I'm not saying it would have made the hundreds of millions of dollars worth of difference in its near $400 million box office. And this wouldn't make the hundreds of millions of dollars difference from Superman going from 600 mil to $1 billion. But I'm just saying, like, obviously, if we want the DCU to prosper and, you know, Superman slap well, it would be quite an L if China are like, no, no Superman. None of our box office contributing towards your worldwide box office, so I guess we're going to have to wait and see. Now, up next, DCU Batman. There's been a bit of a story going around of where I am in a bit of two minds about this. Some people are like running with the ball, being like, oh my god, but I'm just like, okay, wait, I wanna hold back. But it is very interesting. It is very interesting. Shout out to Andy Burbach for doing this interview. Popular casting choice for DC's new Batman addresses whether he's had talks with DC Studios and opens up about being a favorite pick. Now, the reason why this is interesting, if we cut to what they were saying, so, you know, they talk about how he embraces being like this fan casting. He's like, yeah, let's keep running with that. We've heard Brandon Sklenar talk about this before, saying, you know, I have no issue with it. This is so cool that people see me like that. But then, Sklenar was also asked if he's had any calls with DC Studios about taking on the role of Batman in the DCU franchise. So Screen Rant literally asked, has anyone ... and then, you know, makes a phone call gesture. So the interviewer, like Andy, I assume, was like, has anyone... And Brandon Sklenar, literally, in the answer, yeah. I think there's some awareness of me on some level, probably. But yeah, I know there are ways away from doing that. But yeah, obviously, the little kid in me and the adult me is like, this is so cool, and I have a bunch of ideas. Anyway, it'd be cool. Now, people are taking that singular yeah to be like, this confirms that has anyone, in response to has anyone, you know, the interviewer gesturing that to Brandon Sklenar, and him saying, yeah, being like someone he has called him from DC Studios. I don't want to burst anyone's bubble, but I just don't have full conviction in that answer myself. Like, I get it, but it could have just been like an impulsive answer. So, you know how if somebody said to you, imagine it, like, has anyone, you would be like, yeah, you know, I think there's some awareness of me on some level. Like, you're not going to directly answer it, even though some people are arguing that, yeah, full stop, was the direct answer. It's just, you know, reading something on paper sometimes, the takeaway is so much more bluntly an answer than maybe the personable answer he would have given in voice and in person or over video call. That's why I'm like, I wouldn't, I hate to, again, because I know there's so many Brandon Sklenar Batman fan casters out there watching this video. Shout out to Brutal Vengeance there. I don't want to say yes. He's literally saying yeah in response to has anyone, yeah, because he's like, yes, literally somebody called me. Because he right away goes on to, yeah, I think there's some awareness of me on some level. I think at this point, with the amount of people going on about it, the amount I hear about it, I think they might have heard about it in some way, you know, that kind of thing. Rather than, I know I keep going around in circles here, the answer being, has anyone, Mr. Sklenar, has anyone, you know, dialed you up kind of thing? Yeah. And that's him literally replying to, has anyone called you about Batman? So I think this is just, we don't know. We don't really know. I think if I had to place money on this, I'm not saying nothing's happened behind the scenes, because never say never, I suppose. But if I had to place money on this, has anyone from DC Studios, so like, I guess that would be Gunn himself, called him up to be like, yo, bro, like, how would you feel about coming in to talk about Batman? You obviously still need to have a, you know, test, this, that, and the other, similar to what Corenswet went through with, you know, Superman and Nicholas Hoult and stuff, but I don't know. But he does say things like, I know there are ways away from doing that. So I think I wouldn't be surprised, you know, the fact that Brandon Sklenar is saying that with confidence, I know there are ways away from doing that, which is true. Brave and the Bold, in theory, if things don't change and they don't flip around that October 27 release date with, you know, the Batman Part 2 and the Brave and the Bold, it is kind of a ways away unless they want to do Batman in some way, shape, or form in the Clayface movie, even if in a teeny tiny little role. The fact that he knows that means he's obviously looked into it a little bit. Like, in some way, shape, or form, maybe called up his agent / manager, being like, hey, could you look into this? And, like, maybe that way they've got, some, you know, a feel about something. So that's my 2 cents on the situation. I know some people probably wanted me to say, like, oh my god, he's literally confirming that he got called from DC Studios. I know that's the way some outlets are re-reporting this Screen Rant interview, but for now, I'm gonna be skeptical. But ladies and gentlemen, that is everything from me in today's video, unless, as I have got often used to saying here now, unless future Boba has appeared. You never know. This is one of the ones where I'm filming it a little bit more in advance, so there could be a crazy new update story. If not, I guess it's just been me, past or present Boba. handling this news roundup. But if you've liked this news roundup, I would greatly appreciate it through you maybe leaving a like, consider subscribing. Would really appreciate that. A lot of you watch the videos. A lot of you sometimes check that subscribe button and you're like, wait, well, I thought I was subscribed. So maybe today is the day you'll consider subscribing, or maybe check the subscribe button. But until next time, guys, I really appreciate you watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.